Welcome to the Owl's Edge, where smart gets wise. I'm your host, Susan Black-Beth, founder and managing partner of Auspicious Owl Group. On the Owl's Edge, we'll be bringing conversations, insights, and learnings about franchising and private equity out from behind closed doors and turn hard-earned experiences into your competitive advantage. Thanks for joining me. Let's swoop in and get wise. Welcome back to Aviary Studios. I'm your host, Susan Black-Beth, and this is the Owl's Edge podcast. Today's guest is Liberty Bernal. She brings 30 years of experience across franchise development, operations, marketing, and leadership, helping founders build scalable systems, strong cultures, and intentional growth. A human-centered operator, she believes businesses should support the lives behind them. Welcome, Liberty. We've known each other for probably longer than either of us want to admit. I think our ages started with twos when we started hanging out together. One of the reasons that I wanted to talk with you is because you've, like me, have had a varied journey in franchising. You have sat in a lot of different seats. You've worn a lot of different hats, and not all of it has been super easy. There have been some pretty rough paths along the way. And you know me well enough to know that the foundation of franchising, relationships, values, culture, trust are all super important pieces of the puzzle. Tell me about a time anywhere in your journey where the relationships with franchisees were really, really challenged in a way that you had to dig deep to figure out the best path back forward.
When I had sold my company, Liberty Fitness, to private equity. And initially there was a lot of excitement around that sale, and myself, my family, and franchisees included, infusion of cash, people who really understood the franchising industry for decades. My family had been really new in it. But as we moved forward and some tough calls had to be made about changes with the brand and even in the business model, franchisees grew irritated, and the conversations around their irritation, were both challenging. They were complex. In some cases, franchisees chose to close their doors where they may have otherwise stayed open. And, in franchising, as a franchisor, and I think as a responsible franchisor, you often feel that you're carrying the weight of your franchisees' finances for them. I used to imagine myself just kind of hauling around their houses on my back if I knew there was a mortgage. And in fact, my family had 2 mortgages on a house, to start the company. So when I knew those decisions were being made and doors were closing and franchisees were upset, it absolutely crushed me. They were definitely some of the heaviest. It was early in my career, and I've carried them with me through the decades as a reminder of just how important it is to be responsible and careful with franchisees' lives and businesses.
You bring up several points that I want to highlight about why Auspicious Owl and the work that we're going to do here is so important to me. And that is because there is a franchisee who put a second mortgage on their home on the other side of so many of these transactions, or rolled their 401k, or pledge the kids' college fund to take a chance on themselves and their families. Certainly that happens on the franchisor side too, but I believe with more frequency likely on the franchisee side. And I want to always keep this, the people piece of franchising at the center. You said you carried such a heavy burden, and I get that. What do you know now that you would do different if you could tell 22-year-old Liberty?
I would sit down with 22-year-old Liberty and explain a lot more thoroughly the potential downsides and the potential hard realities of when things don't go exactly as planned, not only in a franchise business, but in any business. I think quite often in franchising, we tell and we're told the most positive version of the story, and everyone has, their hopes up and their dreams are high, and, it's such a positive picture. And of course, I mean, the whole sales process, which I was intimately part of in selling the franchises, we don't want to talk about the potential negatives, but there's actually nothing wrong with that. So I would explain to 22-year-old Liberty that it's okay to talk about the uncomfortable, and you'll actually find more strength in that, and you'll feel clearer in that.
Well, and I think we have a lot of conversations around franchise sales and, oh, I've sold this many and I've got this many in the pipeline and I've got this and I've got that. But we don't often talk about the number of times that we should have a conversation as a franchise development person with a franchisee that says, you're not necessarily the right fit here. Like this isn't the right place for you. Right. And I had a conversation with one of our friends yesterday that was, I would rather a franchisee or a prospect be upset with me at the beginning before, right, they have
Yeah.
put the second mortgage on their house than
Yeah.
after, especially if I had a knowledge or an intuition, right? It's reality. It's not being negative. It's not being overly optimistic. It's just being a realist, right?
Yes,
You
absolutely.
you also mentioned change, and I am very clear on the fact that change is going to become a real focal point for Auspicious Owl. I'm one of those goofy people that when things stay the same too long, I get a little weirded out. I like change. I like things to be fresh and new, and I like to figure out new challenges. I know that makes me different. How do you think about prepping a team, whether that is a corporate team or whether that's your new team or even your household sometimes, right, for change?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's along almost the same idea as prepping someone for something negative potentially happening, especially if, just the way you just framed it, that change can be hard. It might not always be positive for people. So again, it's more of a matter of having the conversation up front, because anything in life, when you're prepared, you're way better off for it. So change really is the only constant. So I think about, my 12-year-old Gracie, and she's really a routine kind of little girly. Like she needs to know what's happening, when, what time, how, where, when, like everything. And not that she's frozen if things change, but I've learned that she needs prep about what may or may not happen or how the plans could shift. And I've noticed, as long as she's given that heads up, things go a lot more smoothly.
Mm.
She's better off going with the flow. And I only understand that because in my life, I've been like Gracie. I'm okay with change like you are, but I really like sticking to a routine and a plan. And when things go off of that, I lose it a little bit. So yeah, anything that's considered a negative really shouldn't be the unspoken. And I think it's of utmost importance in the franchising part of that, with a franchisor to their franchisees, or a corporate leader to their team. I think we'd all be crazy if we expected that everything was always status quo and to not be prepared for that change.
Yeah, I think the change is the only constant is
Yeah.
definitely the case. But for so many of us, right, values and culture, trust are built on consistency, right, and steadfastness. And then similar to what your experience may have been when private equity comes in, it definitely change is going to happen. It is inevitable. So we can understand why change is so hard, especially when you've staked so much on a certain set of values and principles and culture, right?
Yeah. And I think that somewhere deep down, even if we might not consider ourselves a people pleaser, I have been a people pleaser in my past. And I think that's why I avoided the tough conversations. But again, now in hindsight and with some wisdom and years under my belt, I've realized that the most people pleasing I can do is have the tough conversations up front before it happens. So that later someone isn't saying, but you said it would all work out, but you said you had this figured out, but and it's so much worse. So that was the mindset shift for me, is realizing I'm not going to break someone's heart by telling them that things may not work out later, that it's actually better.
It's such a great point, and one of the greatest learnings for me as I have aged and progressed in my career too is that there truly is a difference between being nice and being kind.
Yes.
And I
Yeah.
spent a lot of my life being nice. And the most gracious thing you can do for somebody is to be kind, right?
Agreed.
And kind isn't just there to make somebody feel better. It's there to make sure that they have, I think, as many facts as you're in a position to share. From a leadership standpoint, another, really hot button for me is just the amount of leaders that we are bringing up through the franchise world. And it used to be us, girl, but it ain't anymore. So I don't think we're on the back nine by any means, but definitely
Yes.
there's another round of leaders coming. And as private equity has gotten more and more capital deployed into the franchise space, more leaders that didn't grow up here, right, didn't
Yeah.
grow up in franchising, are being brought in. And there is a very different leadership style with franchisees not being your employees. In certain organizations, non-franchised, command and control works, right? Like, do X, Y, or Z. And if you don't, the next conversation we have is you don't work here anymore. But in your
Yep.
conversations with franchisees, like, that's likely going to backfire. And it's more of a leadership by influence style. Either think about when you were in the leadership seat or a time you observed leadership just like done really, really well.
Oof, my gosh. I have had the opportunity to observe it all. I've seen it done really, really well and really, really not well. And I had actually that contrast early after that acquisition as well. So, Liberty Fitness acquired, and I feel guilty saying this, Susan, because the first CEO was a very nice man. And now, interestingly, this was 21, 22 years ago. So, where you were saying private equity is now bringing in sort of outsiders, even back then, with a very seasoned team of franchise executives, minus the CEO, they chose a CEO who had no franchise experience. He had a
Mm.
Stanford MBA and not a lot of leadership experience, interestingly, but for some reason, the team brought him in as the initial CEO to take over after the sale. And it was not a positive experience whatsoever. A whole lot of money to the tune of millions of dollars was really misspent. It was mismanaged and misspent. At first, everyone thought new brand, knew this, knew that, changed the business model, but the franchisees were actually being ignored. It was just, I'm not even joking you. The mantra was they need to get on the train because it's leaving the station. And if they don't, they're left behind. So that obviously didn't last a long time. It did enough damage to last forever, unfortunately. But the following CEO who came in was someone who was a seasoned franchise executive, who was more of a servant leader. And she happened to be a woman. And I think understanding that our business model was targeting women, that also made sense. The first CEO was actually a man. Gender shouldn't always matter, but in this case, it did. So she understood the business model. She understood that the end user or member of that fitness studio concept, but she understood the franchisees and what they needed at that time. And it was a really fantastic example of what to do. And she physically went out to locations and visited with franchisees. And, I used a lot of those tactics later on in my career. When I worked with disgruntled franchisees as a consultant, I would go physically visit them. And again, those tough conversations have to happen face to face, not on the phone, even, this way through a Zoom it's not the same.
I couldn't agree more. I had an example of someone telling me that they were being brought in by a private equity group to lead a turnaround. And so the first thing that they did was pack their bags and get out on the road, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that made total sense to me. And they said that the feedback that they got from their board is, what are you doing? Right? Like,
Wow.
what are you doing? You need to be in the office. You need to be with the team pushing down this information and so on and so forth. And it's just crazy to me how some of this stuff, for those of us that really truly grew up here, is almost intuitive, right? You just know it's the right answer and you've seen it work for decades. And so when somebody comes in and says, what are you doing? It's like I'm leading a franchise organization. These people in many cases put everything they had into this, right? Like
Yeah,
they deserve my time. What
well,
do
you
you
did.
think from a building trust, right? Building trust is it a skill?
Mm. I think it is. So it's interesting you bring this up. I've been having a lot of conversations around this, not only trust, but words like it. Actually, most people listening to this, I'm sure, know Mary Thompson, our current chair, almost outgoing chair of the IFA. But I'm so lucky that Mary is my mentor and we have regular conversations. And Mary often poses questions to me about things like, trust and what it means, or what I want to stand for and what any executive might want to stand for or make sure others understand they stand for. And trust is one of those words where Mary and I were actually discussing the word transparent. We were talking about the word trust. We were talking about words like that. Like, do they mean the same thing? Or do the words professional and respect mean the same thing? And in fact, you can learn them. So that I do think that the skill of becoming trustworthy is learned. I think it kind of has to be, because some of the actions around it need to be purposeful. So to be a good listener, for example, I need to make sure, I know I have a lot to say, but I know that it's more important to listen. And so I need to tell myself to be a good listener. And that's part of building trust. So again, going back 20 years and learning skills and honing things in, I was often told, Liberty, you're everyone knows you got something to say, but zip it and listen and build trust that way. Listen and then take action. So that also is part of it. I think being trustworthy, though, does come with something that's just inherently in you. I do think that some people aren't trustworthy. You meet them and you're like, there's a vibe going on. And that's really a thing. But I think for most professionals and for so many people in franchising, because it's such a people business, there's trust there, but to really fine tune the skills and use them and not use them to manipulate, but use them to build business and help other people build their business is the true skill.
When you spent some time away from the franchise space, what did you miss most?
Oh, the people. Most definitely. What's funny is I missed the people. And you would think, well, when we really miss the people, you can still be in touch with them. Yes, there's social media and there's texting and there's talking, but it's also different when you're not in it, when you're not attending the events and touching and hugging and sharing ideas and sharing panels and going to the things. It is really different. It's a family. And for me, starting when I was a little baby, pretty much, I do consider people like family, in some cases closer than my actual blood relatives.
When I stepped out, I also missed the people and the relationships, and I had small touch points. It just wasn't my day to day anymore.
Yeah.
And so as I was prepping for this call, I hope this isn't upsetting, but one of the things I thought about was the day that your dad passed and that we were
Oh,
together, right?
yeah.
And we were together, and that is like just wrapping you up and being present for it happened to be the time of the year, right, that we were all together. But I just don't know that many other industries get to have that kind of business friendships that become lifelong friendships. And part of what I
Exactly.
hope this next chapter holds for me is a protection of sorts of the franchise business model, so that these leaders who are now in their 20s and 30s get to have the lifelong friendships while still in the franchise business model, like you and I got to have, right? Or
I
get to have.
agree. I agree. And it's so interesting that you do bring up that example, because that is often how I've explained the relationships in franchising of, when my dad passed away, those who were there for me. And I literally felt hugged, like, emotionally and physically, just, yeah, like taken in and supported by my franchise family. And, that I happened to be on the women's franchise committee with you. And I just remember the committee meeting, and I just thought, most people would think this was the last place I should be right now, but it was actually the very best place I could be. And my dad wouldn't have wanted it any other way because he knew how important that was.
What's one piece of advice you would give to private equity, inclusive as institutional capital, right? Whether that would be a family office or whether that would be an actual private equity firm or an independent sponsor. What's one piece of advice you would give to them about their time of ownership or investment in a franchise brand? So anything sort of post-close to when they then sell that asset.
Yeah, I would say, to me, this is so obvious, and perhaps to you too, but the franchisees are people. They are people with families and dreams. And this is all, typically, there will be some outliers, but this is all new for them. This is the biggest, most important, wow, the highest star they've ever touched in the sky type of investment that's ever been made. And it's a really, really big deal. So think of the franchisees as your nieces and nephews or your best friends or maybe their kids, but that needs to be put first and foremost before any decisions are made. It just is, and it just does, and things will go better. We obviously need to make decisions when it comes to a bottom line, and we do, and we get it. But if we can keep that top of mind, we're going to have a much stronger system and much more success.
What's something that you are concerned about for the next, let's just call it 5 years of franchising? What's something that's got your red flag radar up?
I just am not seeing enough franchise systems, companies, people slowing their roll on franchise development. In the role I have right now as president and COO of Sweet Influencers, we're a digital marketing agency, but we really specialize in influencer marketing. We're having conversations with a lot of C-level executives at the franchises. I just keep hearing the brag about how quickly growth is happening and how many franchises are being sold, ignoring how many are closing or should close, ignoring how many will actually open. It's just such a rampant problem. And I'm just so shocked every day that it's not discussed more, nor is it addressed and handled. So I did recently bring on a new client for Sweet Influencers who did state that they just, and I don't want to say FSOs are bad, but they realized the FSO was great for its time, but they did let the FSO go. Franchise development is not only in-house, it's technically on hold so that they can really wrap their arms around the existing system and focus on marketing, consumer marketing, and get their franchisees growing first. So if I heard that conversation more often, it would feel so encouraging, but that is definitely not the norm.
Yeah. I have just said time and time again, like franchise systems are not meant to grow this fast. And I was in this conversation downtown Chicago yesterday, and I said, look, they're not meant to grow this fast. And somebody said, well, why not? And I said, because the amount of resources that it takes to support a new franchisee so that they do have long-term positive outcomes, right, is so heavy up front in that first 18 months that until you have a really great, strong operational opening support, 3 months out, 6 months out, 9 months out from opening, like it's hard to make sure that everybody gets your attention. Right.
Yeah.
And they need it. And that's part of what our fees are going for.
Absolutely. And I've recently witnessed a system that grew and grew and grew and grew over years. They acquired it happened to be Fitness Concepts. And they're recently sort of like recoiling now because the growth was too fast. They had all of these support processes in place that they've now had to pull back on. They don't have the ability to support the corporate team. And now franchisees are really hurting because they're left sort of holding the bag and they're alone. I have some coaching clients who are franchisees and they need a business coach because their franchisor can't support them. And they're saying, I don't even know how to train my new staff members at a front desk because everything's been taken away and there's no one to even call, so to see that end of the spectrum as well. That is
one of the things I'm taking away from this conversation is frankly something you and I've talked about over the years too, right? Like none of us are perfect, whether we're franchisors, franchisees, we're hopefully making the best decisions we can with the facts we have on any given day. So are there wonderful franchise stories and scenarios? Absolutely. Are there disastrous ones? Absolutely. But I feel like by and large, most of our colleagues and peers in franchising really truly want to do the right thing, right? They
agree.
want to do the right thing. And once we start having more of these conversations, hopefully that will become easier for the masses again. So tell me something that you're excited about for the next 5 years.
Right now, marketing has become such a focus point for me. And, not only influencer marketing, that's just one element of it. But the reason I'm so excited is how it positively affects franchisees, that there are marketing tactics out there that are affordable at a local level and that can be done, in an authentic voice and, truly to benefit the franchisee's business. And there are a lot of franchisors out there who are willing to properly allocate marketing dollars toward tactics like that.
One of the things I want to use this platform for is to bring attention and light to really important causes that are, that you're passionate about and that the franchise space needs to know more about. Would you talk about your experience with the Challenged Athletes Foundation, please?
I will. Yes. The Challenged Athletes Foundation has been part of my life now for a great number of years. And I've participated directly with challenged athletes through the foundation, but also, raised money. So it is actually based here in San Diego. And the idea is there are a lot of people out there who may lose a limb, right? Like what happens when you get in an accident? My friend Tara was in an accident and she lost her leg. She had actually never really been a competitive athlete prior to that. But what the Challenge Athletes Foundation does is they'll actually identify people who are recovering and let them know we have the ability to give you prosthetics that give you a chance to not just move again, but move perhaps in a way that you never thought was possible. You can run, you can swim. There are athletes that need special equipment for different sports. And it's not like you're going to the Olympics. You don't have to feel that way. It's just to get out there and move again. And as you can imagine, Suze, it helps save people's lives mentally and emotionally, even more than physically. So the Challenge Athletes Foundation was actually founded in part by one of my friend's fathers. And that's how I first was introduced. But over the years, there's every year, there's a multitude of events that happen from bike races to triathlons and runs. And it's very encouraging. The athletes are of all ages, all fitness levels. Some do go to the Paralympics. It's the coolest thing. And I've just been honored to be part of it. So some years I'm much more involved than others, but I would say if there's one standout organization that needs some more attention, it would be them.
Awesome. We will put a link to their website in the show notes. One of the things that you mentioned early on was learning to listen was a skill. And I'll close by sharing a phrase I heard a long time ago, which was, we have 2 ears and 1 mouth, use them in proportion. Right.
I love that.
And as a mom, that's been an important one. As a spouse, that's been an important one in my life. Certainly, as a franchisor, that's been an important one in my life. And I think that's just a good summary. What I want you to hear is that I love you and I am so proud of you. And I am grateful for you and our 20 plus years, 25 years, of friendship that we've gotten to share. And that you are the genuine, authentic person that shows me that it's okay to have the good and the bad days. And I'm grateful for you. And thank you for taking this time with me today.
Thank you so much.
You bet.
Thanks for joining me on the Owl's Edge. If you found this conversation enlightening, please share it with others who influence outcomes for franchise stakeholders. To explore more on the topics of franchising and private equity, visit us at auspiciousowlgroup.com and be sure to follow the Owl's Edge wherever you listen to podcasts. Until next time, be smart, be wise.